I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, the election of the State of Israel's next president, former Speaker of the Israeli Knesset, Reuven Rivlin, who won a runoff election in the Israeli Knesset, defeating Meir Shitrit. Reuven Rivlin had 63 votes to Meir Shitrit's 53 votes. The two men had actually placed first and second in the first round of elections that had a field of 5 candidates, but neither Rivlin nor Shitrit was able to garner a majority of 61 or more votes needed to be elected President of Israel in the Israeli Knesset. Rivlin will now assume the office of the presidency when the current president of Israel, the iconic 90-year-old Shimon Peres, concludes his 7-year term on July 27th. Mr. Rivlin had actually run against Mr. Peres in 2007, but withdrew his name when it became clear that Shimon Peres would win. Now, most American Jews are very familiar with Shimon Peres, who's been in the forefront of Israeli politics for virtually the entire lifetime of the modern State of Israel. He served as prime minister in a coalition government with Yitzhak Shamir in 1984, and again as prime minister after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in 1995. And he may be most well known as one of the architects of the Oslo Accords, for which he won the Nobel Peace Prize together with Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat. And Shimon Peres has remained a staunch supporter of the two-state solution, and he's been honored by President Obama for his commitment to the peace process. So many American Jews are very familiar with Shimon Peres. But Reuven Rivlin, on the other hand, is far from a household name in the American Jewish community. Who is Reuven Rivlin, and why did he merit being elected president of Israel to succeed Shimon Peres? Well, to help give us a sense of who this man is, what he stands for, and what his election says about the Israeli people today, we're pleased to be joined once again by the Washington bureau chief of the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, Ron Kampeas. Ron, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm very well. Good to talk to you again. Ron, I want to begin simply asking you, who in the world is Reuven Rivlin, and why is it that he now is the newly elected president of the State of Israel?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with a very long career. You're right. He's not a household name here in the United States. He is kind of a household name in two ways in Israel. First of all, because he's so well known. He's been around. He's like one of the go-to talking heads for the Likud party going back at least to the 1970s. You know, he would be the guy that the TV camera would pull up to ask to explain the position of the day. Very, very much deeply involved in the Likud party, which is now headed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he was a speaker of the Knesset, which is a very high-profile job, and it's also a job that in Israel conveys the image of being bipartisan or multi-partisan in a way, even if your roots may be very partisan, as Reuven Rivlin's were. But he's also a household name because Rivlin's a revered name in Israel. People think, they think modern Zionism started with Herzl, and it did to a degree. Theodor Herzl consolidated modern Zionism in the 1890s. But really, there's been emigration to Israel from the diaspora over millennia, and modern Zionism probably more accurately started in the 1830s or 40s, and that's when Reuven Rivlin's ancestors came from Russia. So they are like it's like electing somebody president here named Washington or Jefferson. That's how ensconced they are in the Israeli memory, and everybody knows how deeply involved that family is in the country's history, and there's streets named after the family. There's a Rivlin Street right smack in the center of Jerusalem.
So again, for Israel, this is a man of celebrity, yes?
Very much so, I think, yes.
Let's talk about some of the stands he's taken. He is known, as you say, he was a major factor and figure in the Likud party. So he is on the right in the State of Israel, correct?
He is on the right, and he has. He's probably the first president, I would think, that is opposed to a two-state solution. He favors some sort of accommodation of the Palestinians in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, their incorporation into a greater Israel. But oddly, within that spectrum, within that one-state spectrum, he would be seen as more liberal because he's talked about extending citizenship to the Palestinians in those areas rather than having them exist in a one-state Israel under a separate status.
He is not a supporter tremendously of Benjamin Netanyahu, correct?
That's right. They've clashed in the past. There have been personality differences, and I think that Rivlin maybe feels that as a member of the Likud's old guard, he had been sidelined by Netanyahu in the past. Certainly when Shimon Peres was running for the presidency in 2007, he didn't find a lot of... Rivlin ran against him then, and he didn't garner a lot of support from the Likud, which was then led by Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yes. He was against the disengagement in Gaza and was critical of Ariel Sharon, correct?
Yeah, and that he's very much of the Likud in the sense that when Ariel Sharon disengaged from Gaza in 2005 and set up the Kadima party, to the degree that there was a moderate wing of the Likud, they left the Likud and joined Sharon and Kadima. So those who were left in the Likud, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, who were very much of the right, and among them was Reuven Rivlin.
Okay. To what extent, then, do you feel Netanyahu is upset by this Israeli election in the Knesset that gives Reuven Rivlin the presidency of Israel?
I don't think that he's upset so much by Reuven Rivlin getting the presidency. First of all, because it's a very symbolic position. It wields the power of persuasion. You know what they say? The Pope, what Stalin said about the Pope is, does he have any battalions? Does he have any troops? And of course, he doesn't. And the same thing can go for the president. He doesn't really wield that much executive power, except in terms of deciding who should have a first shot at forming the next government after a given election. What happened with Netanyahu was that he was interested in eliminating the presidency, in consolidating some of the, I think it's pomp and circumstance in the office of the prime minister, and also in not leaving it up to the president who should have the first shot, because sometimes sometimes it's a tough call. Sometimes the president can actually make history if you've had an effectively split election, as happened a couple of times in the 1980s, by letting one side or the other have first go. So I don't think he's upset at Rivlin per se. I think he's more, he's disappointed that his plans for eliminating the presidency didn't go through.
He had hoped, however, that the president who would be elected after Shimon Peres would be some kind of ally. He does not have an ally in Rivlin, correct?
He doesn't have, I think he has a political ally in Rivlin, and we'll see. In terms of the actual, he has a policy, let's put it this way, he has a policy ally in Rivlin. He might not have a political ally in Rivlin, but then Rivlin has now been elevated to a position that's above politics. So it might be better for Netanyahu to have Rivlin here rather than within the party maneuvering.
It's interesting. I have seen all kinds of commentary now to Rivlin's election, and one of the things people are saying is that because Rivlin does not support the two-state solution, and Netanyahu at least is on record supporting it. There are many people on the left here in America who argue that really Netanyahu isn't committed in his heart to the two-state solution, and that the Likud party as a whole, even in the government, the Likud Knesset members would never validate any kind of two-state solution plan had Netanyahu brought it to the Knesset. At the moment, it doesn't look like there's going to be a two-state solution. But that, in fact, the suggestion is that Netanyahu was further to the left than the Likud party was, and that the other members of the Likud Knesset are. And here you have now a president who has gone on record saying he's against the two-state solution and has been, as Speaker of the Knesset, quite willing to take partisan positions when he thinks they're important. So that there are some people who are saying that Netanyahu could run into problems with Rivlin because Rivlin is so much against the two-state solution. What's your sense?
I just don't think it's going to play out that way, and I'll tell you why. I think that Netanyahu, to the degree that he's embraced the two-state solution, has done so under pressure, particularly from the United States and even more particularly from the Obama administration. Ariel Sharon, when he shifted from annexing the West Bank to any degree that he ever embraced that, but when he shifted towards a two-state solution, it was his decision. It was his evolution. He saw how unmanageable, from his perspective, it had become to govern 2 million Palestinians, and I think that's what drove him. I don't know if there have been indications that maybe that Netanyahu has had that aha moment, but he's acted more like someone who has embraced it to the degree he has because he has to in the international arena, and he actually appreciates to a degree the pressure from the right wing that allows him to resist a lot of the American pressure. He can say, look, this is what my country wants, this is what my party wants. And if he has a symbolic figure like the president of Israel saying we should resist the two-state solution, that's even better for him. That's what I mean when I said that Rivlin might not be a political ally. They might have had their decisions in the past, but I think he is going to be a policy ally for Netanyahu.
Very interesting, very interesting. Now, Ron, what does this election of Rivlin say about the Israeli people? And does it indicate the extent to which the Israeli center is now comprised of leaning more to the right, that in essence the right has become the Israeli center?
I think that the balance is pretty much as it was. When you consider who was running against, I think that's true. I think that the right has become the center, but I think that's been true since the Second Intifada, and with maybe a hiccup when Ehud Olmert was elected in 2006. I don't think that people in the West underestimate the degree to which the Second Intifada undermined Israeli confidence in the peace process.
Absolutely.
And I think that I think that's been around for 15 years. So I think that the balance. Of course, the president is elected by the parliament, by the Knesset. A lot of it has to do with horse trading. That's what brought the president before Paris in, Moshe Katsav, and who became an embarrassment to the state of Israel and the people of Israel. But on the other hand, it does reflect, the makeup of the Knesset does reflect where the Israeli body politic is at, and certainly 63 to 53 in terms of favoring two states to one state, or perhaps better said, in favor of embracing an accelerated peace process to a more slowed-down peace process. That sounds exactly about right. That sounds where the Israeli public is.
Rivlin is not Peres. Peres was a champion of the two-state solution and was incredibly embraced by the Obama administration and by President Obama himself. He received many awards. He's about to receive another award from the Obama administration. Do you think the Obama administration or President Obama is upset that the new president of Israel does not share this commitment to a two-state solution and the peace process as the United States defines it?
I don't know if he's upset. I know that they're probably sorry to lose Peres, for sure. They loved Peres. As you pointed out, he got the Presidential Medal of Honor. He's about to get the Congressional Gold Medal. But I don't think that they ever had any illusion that he was going to continue in any capacity. He's 90 years old. Nor did they think that there was somebody who could fully replace him. Would they have better appreciated somebody like Meir Shitrit, who is in the Hatznua party, which is it's the one party in the last election that really, really ran on the peace process. And, I'm sure they would have liked it had Shitrit won, but I don't think that they're that disappointed that Rivlin got in. And I think they probably see somebody. Rivlin is, like you said, he's partisan. He can be tough-minded, but he's also somebody who historically has been somebody you could work with. I mean, he led the Likud negotiating teams in setting up national unity governments and in working with the opposition. He's very much seen by Israelis as a grandfatherly figure. He's
Okay.
74.
And by the way, you have pointed out much of what the Israeli president does is really all symbolic, and that it was simply nice for the Obama administration to have somebody in that symbolic role who seemed to be so pro the peace process or the two-state solution, but really the president doesn't have any power in the state of Israel.
Right.
Okay. One more issue on Rivlin I want you to comment on. At one point, Rivlin, who again is on the right, very much pro-settler, anti-two-state solution, in terms of domestic or internal Jewish politics, Rivlin once called any form of American Judaism that is non-Orthodox American Judaism, he called it a form of avodah zarah, which is the term that means idolatry. What do you think the Rivlin election portends for the relationship between Israel and non-Orthodox Jewry in America?
He's made some very conciliatory sounds in recent weeks. He told the Jerusalem Post, "I'm here to build bridges, not to burn them." He has made those comments in the past, and if you look at the statements coming out of a lot of the major American Jewish organizations, including the ADL, including the Conference of Presidents, they welcome his election. They say they're going to work well with him, that they know him, and then they also say something along the lines of the presidency is very important because it acts as a bridge between the diaspora and Israel. So they're gently reminding Rivlin, you're above this now. Mm-hmm. You don't have to throw bombs anymore. You have to work with us. And I think that's a very sensitive point, especially for American Jews.
Absolutely. So you don't think it's going to create any kind of breach between American Jewry and Israel?
If he does what he says and he builds bridges rather than burns them, no, I don't think it will. I mean, one of the things, one way you will be able to see it is he said in 2007 that he would not address Reform and conservative rabbis by their titles. So we'll see. I mean, he's going to meet a prominent or Reform or conservative rabbi soon enough because they go to Israel, they meet with the president. If he calls them rabbi, then we'll know that he's past it.
Okay, but I want to guess from you. I won't hold you to any answer you give me. I still want to guess. Is your guess Rivlin will call non-Orthodox rabbis when they come from the United States?
I think he will.
I do too. We came to know Peres almost as if he was part of the family. And it's interesting, Ron, you'll tell me whether you agree with me. I believe there was an arc to the American-Jewish relationship with Israel, maybe even the Israeli people's relationship to Peres. I meant Shimon Peres. Because at one point, he was sort of a very formal figure, the kind of guy you stood back from. You didn't have a sense he was a grandfatherly, warm guy who would give you a hug. Right. But in the last few years, that image seems to have changed. And I have a feeling that American Jewry and maybe Israeli Jewry feels much warmer to Shimon Peres. Number one, do you think I've got it right?
I think you have it right. I think that American Jewry, always felt a degree of warmth to him. I think it's become warmer, but certainly he's turned around his reputation in Israel in the presidency for sure.
Okay. How do Israeli Jews view Rivlin personally, and how will American Jews experience him? Is he sort of a warm, cuddly, grandfatherly type, or would you describe it in some other way?
I think he's the warm, cuddly, grandfatherly type who occasionally says something shocking at the dinner table. That's who he is, and I think that's how Israelis perceive him. Okay. They like him. I mean, in an Israeli context, being blunt is considered endearing.
Yes.
They like their talk straightforward, and I think that he's definitely within that tradition.
It'll be interesting and sort of exciting to see how this evolves after he assumes the role of president in July. I have you on the phone. I can't let you go without asking you to give us some perspective on the fallout from the Fatah-Hamas Unity Alliance government. And you know, Ron, we spoke with Aaron David Miller of the Woodrow Wilson International Center, who told us that from his perspective, it is not in Israel's interest for America to stop funding the Palestinian Authority, that really Israel doesn't want the Obama administration to change its funding practices. At the same time, Ron, AIPAC is asking American Jewry to lobby Congress to defund the Palestinian Authority on the grounds that American law forbids government funding of terrorist groups, and Hamas is a terrorist group, and if it's part of the Fatah-Hamas government, then now Fatah is a terrorist group that should not be funded. First, from whatever you've heard, whatever your contexts are, does Israel want the U.S. to stop funding the PA as a result of the Fatah-Hamas unity government, or does Israel hope, under the table, behind the scenes, that the U.S. will continue to fund the Palestinian Authority?
I think you've got it exactly right. I think it's very much the emphasis on behind the scenes will continue to fund. I think that's what really upset the Israelis, is that John Kerry's spokeswoman went out and said, yes, we've examined the situation, we will continue to fund, and we will continue to work with the Palestinian Authority. If she'd said something like, we're investigating this is a very alarming development.
Yes.
And then they'd gone on and continued to fund the Palestinian Authority, I think that the Israelis would have been much more comfortable than that. And, of course, in diplomacy, words mean everything. They mean much more than they do in usual interpersonal relations. And so when, of course, the Israelis wanted a degree of funding to continue because they don't want the Palestinian Authority to collapse. They do want to continue the security cooperation, and Palestinian security is funded to a great degree by the Americans. But they also want Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, on notice that a relationship with Hamas is not acceptable. And now, in the long run, and now the Americans have signaled that it may be acceptable. And I think that's what unnerved the Israelis.
Okay, so to the extent to which you're comfortable doing so, comment on AIPAC's attempt to generate Jewish support in Congress for defunding. I don't understand how those two things go hand in hand. You would think that AIPAC would have gotten the message, just leave this alone. Why is AIPAC making an issue?
You're right. They want an immediate review of the new government and its relationship with the United States, and they want funding to stop pending the outcome of such a review. But the thing is, sometimes you ask for things that you're not going to get. There is no legal provision for suspending funding pending a review. I mean, you have the review, and then you suspend funding. And the thing is, I spoke to an array of experts on the left, on the right today. People like Jonathan Schanzer, who is a very hawkish critic of the Palestinian Authority, and people like Matt Duss at the Center for American Progress. And it's funny, on all the particulars, they were agreed. They said this is probably a bad thing, this whole flirtation with Hamas. On the other hand, Abbas has managed to do it in a way that it's entirely legal. Everybody agreed about that. There's according to the law, there's fairly very little you can do to defund the Palestinian Authority right now.
Well, what about this notion that if Hamas is a terrorist organization, American law forbids the American administration, to then fund any part of a Hamas operation?
Well, that's true. And I spoke to Elliot Abrams, who was the Deputy National Security Advisor under George W. Bush, because he had a similar situation, or I thought it was a similar situation in 2006 when Hamas won parliamentary elections. And he actually said to me, it wasn't a similar situation. In that case, we were advised by the State Department's lawyers that we couldn't deal with the Palestinian Authority because Hamas was a majority in parliament, so it was a terrorist entity. Now, Hamas, it's a government of technocrats who are unaffiliated to Hamas. Hamas backs the government, so the backing of the government in terms of the law would come under the rubric in the law that talks about the undue influence of Hamas in the government. And so there is no undue influence here because they have no. I mean, the assessment is that there isn't undue influence because they don't have anybody in the government.
They have no ministers in the government.
They don't have ministers in the government.
Right.
They're all technocrats.
Okay.
This is according to the people I spoke to.
But is that somehow a ruse here that permits America to continue to fund Hamas? Are you suggesting that the American administration does not know for a fact that Hamas and Fatah made a deal?
No, they know that the Hamas and Fatah made a deal. What I've been told by people in the administration is that they think that this is Abbas's way of neutralizing Hamas, getting them to, because Hamas is in a very weak position. Their things are spiraling out of control for them in the Gaza Strip. This helps neutralize. This is their scenario. This neutralizes Hamas and helps propel Fatah to back into power and possibly allows a kind of political road to return Fatah into controlling the Gaza Strip. That might be quixotic. It might be a little crazy to think that that's how it's going to work out. But that's their agenda in all of this.
We have a very few minutes left. Give me a short, brief answer to a couple of quick questions. Is the Kerry Peace Initiative dead?
For now, it is. Yes, it's absolutely dead for now.
Okay. I hear, Ron, more and more talk in the Jewish world of a one-state solution, in which there'd be, a path to Israeli citizenship that would be offered to Palestinians living on the West Bank. And you even said that's sort of where Rivlin is, in his own thinking. Is the one-state solution gaining traction in the Jewish community?
I don't think it's gaining traction in the Jewish community here. It depends if it becomes a reality, it becomes a real option. It might more and more people might look at it. But right now, I think it's where it always is at. It's gotten some support on the right wing of the Jewish community, on the extreme left of the Jewish community, but the big center, I think, is still very much invested.
Okay, I'm only saying that I'm hearing it from people I didn't expect to hear it from. And we'll see within the next, 3 to 6 months, whether there's really a shift in thinking and that more and more people are suggesting in some way that there should no longer be a two-state solution, because we tried and tried and tried, and there was never a real interlocutor on the other side. Look, with the Kerry Peace Initiative dead, what does the Obama administration plan now for its Middle East strategy?
It's wait and see. It's wait and see. Let's see if Abbas manages to pull this out of the fire, and if he does, then we can revive the talks. I think that's what their strategy is right now.
Okay, and lastly, did Israel make a mistake by announcing it was going to build 1,500 new units on the West Bank because it was reacting to the Hamas-Fatah unity government?
I think that did it make a mistake? It got people upset, but the peace process right now is so dead that it's not. I don't think it's going to have much of a consequence.
I agree with you.
If there was a peace process alive, then maybe there would have been anger and blame.
Okay, it's a complicated issue. We would need more time to talk about it. I think you're fabulous, and I love the fact that you have a range of perspective that is so important for us as American Jews and Americans who watch Shalom TV to hear. You know how much I appreciate the fact that you always take time to be with us. I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha. We will speak often on Shalom TV. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you. The thoughts of the Washington Bureau Chief of the JTA, Ron Kampeas. My thanks to Sloan Copeland, Serge Goldberg, and Carol Lilienthal for this edition of In the News. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.